This is Wretched from Grave Robber, and you're listening to Everything But the Podcast with your host, Tony Saurus Rex.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the debut episode of Everything But the Podcast. I am your host, Tony Saurus Rex. And man, it feels like it's been a while, guys. If you followed me under my name, The Illusionist, and my old podcast, Masters of the Underground, then you already know it's been about 2 years since I last did an interview or any kind of podcast. So it feels kind of like coming home here with you guys, get to entertain you guys, have a little bit of fun. And in just a few moments, we're going to throw it away to an exclusive interview with Wretched from the horror punk band Grave Robber. I really had a blast doing this interview. I think you guys will enjoy it as well. He talks about everything from the formation of the band to his most recent album, Escaping the Grave. He talks about some of the craziest things he's ever seen while on tour, and what it's like to have a true live experience and not just watch live concerts on YouTube, to truly be there in the moment and experience the act that is Grave Robber. I think you guys will really enjoy the interview. Be sure to stay tuned at the end of the interview for a special little bonus that I've included for you guys. And also be on the lookout for new episodes at least once a week. I will not always have a guest on the show. Sometimes it'll just be me hanging out, talking with possibly my wife, maybe some friends. But I'll always be sure to have something up for you guys. I'm really committed to this. I think it's going to be a good time for me and a good time for you as the listeners. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, be sure to follow and subscribe. Maybe share with your friends. Help me get the word out. And I thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. And without further ado, we will throw it away to the interview with Wretched from the horror punk band Grave Robber. And you are now listening to the very first debut episode of my new podcast, Everything But the Podcast. How are you doing tonight, Wretched?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me this evening.
Yes, it seemed like it was only the perfect time for a reanimated corpse to join the cause. I mean, nighttime seemed perfect for that.
Well, is there any other time? I spend the full day down in my lair, so nighttime is when you would be likely to catch me.
Yes. Well, first what I do want to talk about, band-wise, I want to talk about the formation of the band. Like, how did you guys, well, I guess I can't really say meet, but how did you come up with the idea or form your musicianship and your band together?
Well, quite simply, we were all fans of the Misfits, and we are most definitely followers of the Reanimator, and we were always hoping that there was a band that sounded like that, but shared our worldview and had the same message as the Reanimator. And, well, no one else came along, so it was up to us.
That is what I love about you guys. You are one of the very few, I don't know why I said very few. You're probably the only band that's able to cross over into the horror genre and mix in the hidden elements that you have, like the hidden meanings to your songs, which I also want to talk about, but we'll get into that soon. But first, let's talk about your new album. You just dropped Escaping the Grave, I believe it was last year. Not mistaken.
That is the most recent one, Escaping the Grave. Before that was You're All Gonna Die. There was a 7-year period with only an EP in between, so we were quite overdue.
Yes, and the album went off, like, in my opinion, is an amazing album. Everything you guys do is amazing, but if you're a fan of horror in general, you pick up the album. Like, that's why if you're a fan of horror, you'll already like the album, but the way you guys mix real world themes into your lyrics, like, I can go back, I can't pinpoint the exact album, I'm going to apologize for that, but I can go back to, say, Hunger Haunt. At face value, it just sounds like it would be an album or a song about hauntings, but you took that a whole layer deeper, and unless you really study the lyrics, you won't realize that it's actually a song about child hunger. How do you guys decide? What I want to know is how you come up with the ideas for the real-world themes that you're going to incorporate into your song.
Well, it begins with drinking lots and lots of coffee, enough that your brain starts buzzing like crazy, and the ideas just flow. I don't advocate for overdoing the coffee by any stretch. It didn't work out so well for Dave Grohl, so don't overdose on coffee, kids. But to be a little bit serious, since we are such fans of horror and so many movies with titles of the movies that just lend themselves so well to the concepts. And of course, the concepts are things that are very important to us. Ideas and concepts that we want to express and expound upon. I believe that this world is absolutely beyond the doubt the full domain of the enemy. And I also believe that the Reanimator is coming back. And when he does, he will settle the score once and for all with the enemy of our very souls. In the meantime, it's the job of the followers of the Reanimator to begin to express what we believe, to begin to share the truth of who the Reanimator is. And it's not enough just to talk about him. We have to also talk about what he stands for and what he has set forth as universal law.
And for any of the listeners who may not be familiar with who you're talking about, maybe go into a little detail for them. Because we have a very mixed listener base of all backgrounds, and so it might help them out to know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, the Reanimator is the one who could give sight to the blind. He is the one who could control the properties of water and tread upon it. He is the one who can bring the dead back from the grave. Only one in human history to bring himself back from the grave. And he's the only one that can wake up a cold, dead heart and give it life.
That is awesome. Now, we want to get into a little bit more about your music. I know that you guys are, I assume you do a lot of touring, like a lot of live shows.
The past few years have been sort of, shall we say, complicated, and our touring schedule has been a lot less. But we are hoping that by next year in 2020 to have a new album out and to actually be on the road a lot more.
And would you say, like, the music industry as a whole, with the influx of, like, digital media where people can almost put out anything, do you think that, like a little slight hampering on a lot of, like, live touring, or do you think it doesn't really make a difference when it comes to live shows?
Well, I don't know that social media and digital recordings have affected it, but I believe that things like YouTube have affected it. I heard someone say once, I love live music. I can watch it all night long on YouTube. That's no good. That's terrible, because that's not the live experience. The live experience is when you're standing there and someone knocks into you and you knock into them, spill a drink on your foot, and the guy next to you smells sweaty and accidentally rubs his armpit on your shoulder, and you carry his funk with you for the next however long, and you get into your car and you stink because it was hot, and the band sweated on you, and the singer might have spit on you, and it was loud and your ears are ringing, and the band screwed up because they didn't really know their songs that well, and the fog machine was too thick, and you bought a vinyl and accidentally left it in the car and it melted on the dash, and you bought a CD and dropped it in the mud puddle and it ruined the booklet, and you bought a t-shirt and someone with a cigarette bumped into you and burned a hole in it, or you spilled your Taco Bell all over the front of it and stained it. Those sound like negatives, sound like terrible things, but those are things that create memories. Live music is about the experience. It's about the memories. It's about the synapses in your brain buzzing and making you feel very different than if you were just sitting at home in your underwear eating Cheetos, watching some old Bon Jovi video. That is not good. That's not the live experience. It's time that young people learn about what it means to experience live music once again.
I agree with that, and I think you guys will do an amazing job of trying to bring that crowd back in. Just the style.
Well, we can certainly screw up our songs like anybody else, and I can certainly spit on the people in the front row if that helps.
Yeah, I think anybody can do that, or have technical issues with the mics or anything. But that's all part of it.
I can rub my stinky armpit on someone's shoulder. I'll just do my part.
I imagine you being a reanimated corpse, it might be slightly more stinky than most normal stinky armpits.
Now, you see, we've got this reputation for being the most foul-smelling band of all time. I don't think that's true. I've played with many crusty bands in my day, and I think we'd have to work really hard to be that foul.
Who would you say is the crustiest band you've worked with?
Wow, let's see. That's very difficult. Well, back in the day, the Dingees, when they were on tour, I don't know if they even showered at all on tour. Believe it or not, Squad 5-0. Those guys could get pretty rank. But I suppose any band on tour that doesn't really get the opportunity, can eventually smell like moldy cheese.
What would you say are some of your pre-show rituals? Like, how do you get yourself psyched up for a show, or even for a recording before you go into the studio and record? How do you psych yourself up? And besides the coffee, of course, because we know you drink a lot of coffee.
Yes, they have lots of coffee, and for me, lots of water, because I don't stop to drink water during the set. So I have to be pretty highly, drinking lots of water, I guess. But as far as getting psyched up, I really don't try to get psyched up for the show. For me, it's once the intro starts and we walk out, it's just a natural thing to draw on the energy of the music and the audience. And honestly, I have, in my opinion, one of the best punk rock bands in the entire nation backing me up so that I can do what I do. As soon as I hear them hit the first chord, it's on. It's my stage and I take over. And I know that sounds arrogant and cocky, but it's not. It's confidence. Confidence in knowing who I am. Knowing who I am in the Reanimator.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it really doesn't sound cocky when you think about in terms of, you have the band backing you up. In your case, you have the Reanimator out there with you, reaching the crowd or reaching out through you to reach the people who are listening.
That's correct. And I have the confidence in my bandmates to know that they know what they're doing. And they're very strong players. And so I'm very fortunate.
No, I've also noticed in some of your music, from what I take, which drew me into the band, I've noticed that some of your music has harder riffs, almost like an 80s metal kind of vibe to it. Do you notice that when you're playing it, or do you just see everything as the punk?
Well, I grew up in the 80s with the 80s music and into the 90s. I just love all of that music. So it's natural that it comes out. I mean, as much as we love the Misfits and the Ramones, we also love Alice Cooper and Kiss and those kind of bands that were theatrical. But we're also Metallica fans, well, early Metallica. I don't even recognize what this thing that is Metallica anymore, really. But just like most people, I like the early stuff, Megadeth and Motorhead and bands that were hugely influenced us as performers and players.
Yeah, I grew up listening to a lot of Iron Maiden, and I noticed a lot of your choruses, the way you carry your choruses, reminds me of kind of that rhythmic style of the way he could hit some of his notes in his choruses, which kind of drew me in. Because I think you have some of the best choruses in music.
I appreciate that.
The note.
Well, for me, with Iron Maiden, I love Iron Maiden, but I remember buying the first Iron Maiden record when it came out, and I thought Paul Di'Anno was like a more snaky, heavier version of Alice Cooper, but yet he could sing all the high notes as well. So I was initially more of a fan of Paul Di'Anno. So those Iron Maiden choruses certainly have their influence on me, but I'm equally influenced by Black Sabbath and Judas Priest.
Yeah, pretty much any of those bands from the 80s kind of help influence you a little bit, which is kind of cool because it gives your horror punk like an almost different vibe. It kind of blends two different genres of music into one, which makes you very unique.
I always wanted us to have a metal muscle, a punk band with metal muscle. I just always thought that seemed to make the most sense, because if we didn't have that strength in the music, it would just come off as very bubblegum. And that's just, with lyrics, it doesn't make sense.
I agree. And what would you say out of the music you have done, which one would you say has been the most difficult song that you performed?
To perform? Probably.
Yeah, to perform.
Well, that would either be, let me see. We've never played Curse of the Vampire live. That was definitely more of a studio song. And it has the most parts and the most changes and probably the most technical, even though I don't think any of our music is necessarily technical. We're not a prog band whatsoever. But that one probably has the most. And then I would say that one of the hardest ones to rehearse, to play live, and we don't even play it live anymore, was Fill This Place with Blood. Also,
that is an amazing song.
Thank you. Also, I would say Valley of Dry Bones was pretty difficult. Other than that, they're all about the same level of difficulty beyond those songs.
I like also how you did Curse of the Werewolf, but then you also did that crazy remix of Curse of the Werewolf, which gave it a completely different, it didn't even sound, it almost was like it was a completely different song from the original. What gave you the idea to remix that song?
Well, a friend of ours did it, and he wanted to release it. And I said, would you mind if we put it on our album? And that's how it came about.
It was a really good idea, because I like that. You did the same thing with Rigor Mortis. Rigor Mortis was also remixed. Was that the same friend, or was that a different person that did that one?
That was a different one. Angel from the band Dope remixed that one.
That is awesome. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, your song, which is probably my favorite song, I Want to Kill You Over and Over Again. I want you to go into a little bit more detail about that song for people, because like I said earlier, with the hidden meanings, I know there's a hidden meaning in that, but someone who may just take it at face value may not realize the hidden meaning. So maybe you could go to a little bit more detail on a song like that.
That song came about because I wanted to write a 50s style song. And I started listening to all these 50s songs about teenage death. And all of these songs were, about a girl dying on train tracks or in a car crash or, things like Earth Angel and songs like that. But I Will Kill You sounds like it's saying that the boyfriend wants to kill her. And he has this desire to kill her. But what the song is really about is a man looking at himself in the mirror. They always use that phrase, how can you look at yourself in the mirror? And I started thinking, how can I look at myself in the mirror, knowing what I'm capable of, knowing that the sins that I've committed are an atrocity? So how can I look at myself in the mirror? And then I realized that the Reanimator has already abolished every wicked thing that I've done. And in order for me to move forward, I have to continuously kill self. I have to kill my selfishness, kill my pride, kill my ego. I need to die to myself and put other people first. Consider other people more important than myself. And then I can look in the mirror and recognize that what I'm seeing is not the true me. Really, what I'm looking at is just the box that I come in. I'm looking at the packaging. The real me is contained inside. So the self that I'm looking to kill is not the body. The self that I'm looking to kill is my selfishness and my pride and my ego. So the song is a song sung to myself, looking in the mirror and saying, I want to kill you over and over again. So it's not about just killing once and one time, like a murder. It's a continuous killing of the person who could rise up and become prideful, the person who could rise up and consider himself more important than other people. So I do want to kill that self over and over again every day.
And that comes back to exactly what I love about you guys. There's deeper meanings into your songs that people that don't really listen or pay close enough attention to might not pick up on. But that's what I love about you guys, is those true, deeper meanings hidden within the songs that you can never take a Grave Robber song at face value. You've really got to pay attention, and that's what I love, is those multi-layers to your songs.
And on the surface level, we try to write songs that are fun. We try to write songs that when you go to a Grave Robber show, if you've never seen us before, you can engage and become part of the show. When we get on stage, even though I said something sort of cocky earlier about it's my stage and I take over and it, belongs to me, that's true. But since it's my stage and I take over and it belongs to me, I turn right around and I share it with everybody else. I want every person in the room singing along. I want every person in the room engaging. I want every person in the room to be a part of Grave Robber as an entity, just for one night at least. Just for that moment, for that time that we're on stage, you are in the band. You sing along. You're all the backup singers. Let's do this. Let's all do this together. And we've written the song so that if you've never even heard it, you can join in with all the parts where we sing woes and all of that. All the woe parts of the songs are written so that you hear it one time and you can join right in.
That is awesome. So I want to throw it out to the listeners. If you've never gotten a chance to check out a live Grave Robber concert, make sure you look into it whenever they start touring again. Get yourselves out there and check something out for an experience you'll never forget. We don't have a whole lot.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot more time, but I do want to throw another question out there while we still have the time. What would you say is the strangest thing you've seen while on tour? Like it could be in the crowd or something that happened with your band or just something crazy that's out there that's burned into your mind that you remember.
Craziest thing that I've seen in the crowd while we're playing?
Yeah, it could be in the crowd. It could be that you or your bandmates have done. I mean, it could be anything. Just something out there that you remember. Wacky, crazy. I like to throw some tough questions in there for you.
Well, one of my favorite stories was, let's see. I thought about sharing this story, but I changed my mind. It's probably not a good one to share right now. Let's see. Yeah. Something crazy that's happened. There's literally always something crazy that happens during our set, really every time. So for us, something crazy happening is actually normal. But usually people showing up in costume or with makeup on or those kind of things. And we used to spray fake blood off of the stage like guar. And we can't really do that very often because of the mess that it makes in the venues. But I don't know. I suppose that the craziest things that we've ever seen are usually things that are not really that crazy or really that unique. But I will say that we've seen things that have happened afterwards, and just with, I suppose, with just meeting strange and unique people, which is kind of my favorite thing. And I tend to be a freak magnet and draw people who are a little bit on the fringe and people that are outside of the norm. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with kind of being around people that are different, people that don't seem to fit in. So I don't know if that's really a crazy thing that's happened. And I'm sure that as soon as we hang up the phone, I'll think of 100 bizarre, crazy stories that have happened along the way. But one time I'll tell you one thing that was crazy. One time we were out on tour, and there was this guy named Jim who owned a tour bus, and he approached us about going out on tour in a tour bus, which of course we cannot afford. We're just a bunch of low budget touring turds. We go back up in a van and go down the highway. And he said, "No, you don't understand. This is what I do. I take bands out on tour, and I have a full PA system, and I'll take you in a tour bus." So I said, "Okay, free sounds like a pretty good deal to me." All we needed to do was take care of food and the gas. So instead of 2 bands and 2 vans, we had 2 bands on a tour bus, which
That's
actually
cool.
cost the same amount of money. As we were coming from Minneapolis down the highway, suddenly something happened to the engine of the tour bus, and we had to pull over on the side of the highway. And it was discovered that a piece of the hose, a clamp, fell off of one of the hoses on the engine. And we were on the side of the highway, and there was no possible way for us to get anywhere to get a new clamp to put on the hose. And as we were standing on the side of the highway, contemplating what to do, I looked down on the ground and I said, Jim, the clamp that fell off the hose, did it look like that one? And there was a clamp on the highway in the dirt. And he said, that is exactly the clamp that I need for this hose. How we lost the clamp miles and miles back, and suddenly there was the exact clamp that we needed on the side of the road. Kind of shows me the provision of the Reanimator. That was a pretty crazy moment. And
that sounds pretty amazing.
It taught me not to worry, regardless of how bleak things might seem on the surface, or how dark things might get. To not focus on the darkness and to have faith and trust. And I have ever since. And I may get to the 11th hour. I may get to the 11th hour and 59 minutes and 59 seconds. But he's always taking care of me.
I would say that is a great story to end the show with. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find your music, where they can get a hold of some of your records and give you guys a listen?
Well, obviously Spotify, because nobody seems to buy music anymore, so you might as well just go listen to it for free. But if you would like to purchase it and support the band, we're on virtually every download portal imaginable worldwide. And if you would like to buy CDs, our record label, Rottweiler Records, has a store. It's rottweilerrecords.bigcartel.com. And all of our CDs are available except for, we have one album that is actually out of print. So sorry about that. That one will be coming back into print next year.
That'll give people something to look forward to, something that's out of print coming back. That's a pretty cool thing to look forward to.
Yes.
Do you guys have merchandise like shirts or anything like that you sell in your store as well?
Those are on our store, graverobber.bigcartel.com. And you can find that also if you go to our Facebook page, Grave Robber Punk 2. Facebook.com/GraveRobberPunk2. You can find us there, and all of that information is right there. And of course, we're on Instagram and Twitter and everything else. We got to be just like all the other kids.
Yeah, you still got to get it helps with promotion. I'll give it that. That's probably, in today's new day and age, there's pretty much no word of mouth anymore unless you have some kind of social media presence. It's unfortunate because it defeats the way it used to be back in the day when you'd have to put out flyers and go and talk and physically meet people, but I guess it helps people as well. So there's positives and negatives to everything.
Indeed.
Well, Wretched, I thank you a lot for your time and for coming on the show. Hopefully maybe we can talk to you again sometime and delve a little bit more into detail. Maybe when you release a new album. Do you have any plans to work on new music anytime soon?
We are currently writing, and we are also recording some acoustic tracks for an acoustic album, which is kind of a special thing because we invited other people to submit acoustic covers of our songs. So it's something where we want to include other people and that's going to be quite a release. We have quite a few songs, and I think it's going to be something very special.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So maybe when that comes out, you can come back on the show and we can talk a little bit about that and who got to do the covers, maybe who some of your favorite covers are and stuff like that. Maybe we can discuss that in greater detail when it comes out.
I would love to.
All right. Thank you again, Wretched. And I hope you have a pleasant evening wherever you are in the world. And we will talk again soon.
Thank you for having me. And until next time, be afraid. Be very afraid.